2 years ago, I took my first crack at some very early Best Picture predictions, just for fun, and I did surprisingly well. I got 7 out of 10 correct, and honestly, if you don't count Dune 2, which just got delayed a year, it was 8 out of 10. Hey, so I'm feeling good. I tried again that next year, and I didn't get anywhere near that close. I got 3 out of 10. Dune 2, Conclave, and Nickel Boys. 3 out of 10. But don't worry, if we expanded to my honorable mentions, I actually got 3 out of 21. I would like to do better this year. Clearly, though, I need to rethink my strategy. So instead of jumping straight into it, I'm going to walk you through my process a bit more. We're going to try to leave as little stones unturned as possible. We're going to go distributor by distributor in order to try to form a short list, and then we'll reason out which are more likely to get nominated for Best Picture. Okay, so starting off with distributors. There are obviously hundreds of films in the year, and I want to whittle it down to a few contenders. That's where the distributors come into play. For those who might not be aware, a film distributor is sort of like a movie's agent. They're the ones in charge of getting the movie out in theaters, marketing for the movie, and most importantly here, campaigning for the Oscars. Some studios are bigger than others, and they have a better track record than others in getting into Best Picture. We're going to be focusing on the distributors that tend to reliably get at least one film in, and figure out which of their movies are going to be their main focus. Now, it is not out of the ordinary for some of these distributors to have 2 films in Best Picture, and it's not out of the ordinary that they might acquire a film later on that I might not be aware of at the moment. But for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to go one at a time first, given what I do know. A24. A24 is very, very busy this year. They recently acquired Sorry Baby, which was the biggest hit out of Sundance this year, but they also have some movies by some established film directors in their lineup too. Highest to lowest is Spike Lee's latest film remaking the Japanese 1960s film High and Low. Celine Song is following up Past Lives with Materialists, a movie about a matchmaker dealing with her own romantic problems, ooh. And there are the Safdie brothers, who are following up their collaborative hit, Uncut Gems, to each make their own films. The Smashing Machine is a biopic starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and Marty Supreme is a film starring Timothee Chalamet as a ping pong champion, and the movie has been described as a cross between Wolf of Wall Street and Catch Me If You Can. As you can tell, this is my most anticipated movie of the year. Marty Supreme is my pick for A24's main focus because it's clear A24 themselves believe in this project. It has a budget of $70 million, which is their most expensive movie. It's also going to be released in December, which is prime awards campaign timing. While I do have problems with Amazon and MGM, I have to admit they are more reliable than I previously gave them credit for. They have gotten one film into Best Picture constantly. After The Hunt is Luca Guadagnino's next film, and boy does it have a stacked cast. While Luca Guadagnino has not had great luck with the Oscars lately, Challengers and Queer both got no nominations last year despite being good films. There is a lot of hype behind this one. Hedda is a remake of the play Hedda Gabler. I am curious about this one, although I tend to be wary of adaptations from plays. I'm giving the lead here to After the Hunt. Focus Features also has some notable picks. Bugonia is the latest film by Yorgos Lanthimos, who has been on a bit of a hot streak lately with the Oscars, granted usually when he collaborates with writer Tony McNamara. Bugonia is going to follow a few conspiracy theorists who kidnaps the CEO because they think she's an alien, and it stars Lanthimos' usual collaborators Jesse Plemons and Emma Stone. It is remaking the Korean film Save the Green Planet, make of that what you will. Hamnet is Chloe Zhao's next film, who recently won Best Picture for Nomadland. It is based off of the book by the same name, following William Shakespeare and his wife Agnes after the death of their son. I should also note the history of sound, and it sounds like an interesting project, but for the sake of this project, I think Bugonia and Hamnet are the 2 biggest picture deals. Focus could very well have 2 films nominated for Best Picture this time around, but for now, I am going to give the edge to Hamnet. It feels risky not going with the Yorgos film, but I think Hamnet is overall the safest bet. Let's go with something easier now. Neon is a huge distributor and they have an obvious pick, The Life of Chuck. The The Life of Chuck won TIFF's People's Choice last year, which is one of the biggest correlations to a Best Picture nominee ever. When you also consider the fact that the rest of Neon's films appear to be horror films, which Oscars tend not to go for, I think it's clear Neon is going to draw everything into getting The Life of Chuck nominated. I heard they might have picked up Sentimental Value though. That could be a sleeper pick, but The Life of Chuck feels pretty stacked. Netflix also has a lot of huge things this year. The biggest is Del Toro's latest iteration of Frankenstein, which is looking to be one of the biggest movies of the year. Del Toro, who has won Best Picture before, also tends to be a Best Picture staple. Still, it is going to be a horror movie, so let us consider the other choices. Jay Kelly is Noah Baumbach's next film, a coming-of-age comedy drama with a huge ensemble cast. I don't know much else about it, but let's consider it. Katheryn Bigelow's next Untitled political thriller will be on Netflix, let's not forget that. I did tell myself last year when both All Quiet on the Western Front and Conclave got a lot of Oscars attention, I just told myself I would predict whatever Edward Berger did next. Still, Netflix has a lot of competition this year, and I don't think it's going to get nominated, but I did have to mention my other most anticipated film of the year, the next Knives Out film, Banger. I am tentatively going with Frankenstein, due largely to Del Toro's Oscars reputation. Searchlight is absolutely going to get one of their films in here, although their pickings are looking a little bit more mysterious compared to Focus. Assisting on is Bradley Cooper's next film about a divorced couple. It does give me maybe a little too much Marriage Story vibes, but Bradley Cooper has made 2 films and both have gotten nominated for Best Picture. That's just something to consider. Rental Family is a comedy drama movie I'm personally very excited about from Hikari, whose previous director work consisted of some episodes of Beef, and The Roses is a remake of the 80s film, War of the Roses, and has been described as a black comedy film. Those are the 3 that stood out most to me, and as for a Best Picture nominee, I gotta go with the Bradley Cooper film. Universal Studios is obviously powerful, and it looks like they have 2 main candidates, the Michael Jackson biopic and the sequel to Wicked. As you might remember, the original Wicked got nominated for Best Picture just last year and won 2 awards. Of course, sequels tend not to fare as well at the Oscars as the original, so there is a chance Universal pivots to Michael, but I think Wicked 2 is just the safest bet. Besides, I have some reservations about Michael, and we'll get into that later. Warner Brothers does feel pretty cut and dry, but I don't know, there's some stuff to talk about. Obviously, we gotta look at Paul Thomas Anderson's next film, One Battle After Another, which we know very little about other than the fact that it's starring Leonardo DiCaprio and it's Paul Thomas Anderson. However, Bong Joon-ho's Mickey 17 could be in the conversation if people really like it enough, but I don't know. By the time I'm recording, it's already out, and I feel like people like it, but it's not enough to carry it over all the way till next Oscar season. And putting Superman on the shortlist just in case it's really, really good. If it's the movie that saves the superhero genre, Superman could be the consensus pop culture pick, like Wicked was last year and Barbie was before that. But I do think One Battle After Another is 100% getting nominated. But I did mention these other films because Warner Brothers is one of the biggest distributors there are, so they could also very well get 2 if the Fates makes it easy for them. With that said, we now have a rough list of nominees going, ranked from most likely to be prioritized by their distributor to the least. However, a Best Picture nominee does not necessarily come from a big distributor, so in addition to all the stuff we just talked about, let's go with any other film that comes to mind, whether it is from a less reliable distributor or currently unknown. Anne Lee is a musical film following the leader of a real-life historical religious cult. The reason I mention it is that it has a lot of the team behind The Brutalist. Avatar 3 obviously has to be talked about here. James Cameron is not only a director superstar, but the first 2 Avatars did get nominated. It's likely gonna be a massive tech sweeper, and it's being released on Christmas. Still, sequels don't do as well, and we already have Wicked 2, let's consider that. A Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey is going to be Kogonada's next film starring, amongst others, Margot Robbie and Colin Farrell. The fact that it's coming out in May gives me pause, but Sony's sort of the master of surprise last-minute Oscar nominations, so I thought it was worth mentioning. Deliver Me From Nowhere is going to be a Bruce Springsteen biopic starring Jeremy Allen White as Bruce Springsteen. We've established that the Oscars love music biopics, and Yes, I do have concerns about Michael. I get an unusual hunch that the movie is going to end up being divisive, and I'm wondering how it's going to handle Michael Jackson's controversies. Deliver Me From Nowhere, on the other hand, looks like it's going to be safe and generally not offend anyone, and while having Michael Jackson's actual nephew, I accidentally said niece, play Michael Jackson is clearly a compelling narrative, I think Jeremy Allen White from The Bear, playing Bruce Springsteen,
that's America's ass,
is also gonna compel people. I don't think more than one music biopic is getting in because they target generally the same audience. As in, I think the same kind of person is gonna vote for both of these movies, so really I think it's safer to go for one rather than the other. It is honestly a toss-up for me. I'm just saying, just don't dismiss Deliver Me From Nowhere right now. Die, My Love is going to be a horror comedy film about a new mother going through postmortem depression. I almost dismissed it off the genre alone, but does have some star power, and it could be a sort of social satire pick a la The Substance. The Entertainment System is Down is a new satire film by Ruben Östlund, who also did Triangle of Sadness, about people freaking out in an airplane because the entertainment system is down. I'm gonna be honest, I don't really like this premise, it sounds condescending. Not to mention it does feel very similar to Triangle of Sadness, like chaos on transportation. Still, he has Oscars history now, and you should never underestimate the political satire film. The fact that it is so obvious could be a strength. F1 is an Apple Plus movie about race cars, vroom vroom. Why did I type that in? It has the same director as Top Gun Maverick, but it is coming out in June. Maybe it's a tax sweeper. No Other Choice is Park Chan-wook's next film. Now, the Oscars have notoriously never taken to his work, but maybe this is his time. Oldboy recently had its 20th anniversary. I feel like we're getting re-hyped on Park Chan-wook. Maybe. Nouvelle Vague is a sort of Hollywood-y film by Richard Linklater, who hasn't had much luck with the Oscars lately, but it is kind of a movie about movies, so I can't help but wonder that if it does get some buzz, the cheerleaders, that's what I'm calling people who really like movies about movies, could take it all the way there. Knowing Linklater, however, it might not be that straightforward. I had to mention Omaha, which I've already reviewed. It hasn't had a distributor yet, but I do think this movie has potential. Whitney Springs? I don't know if that's the official title. That could also be the social satire. It is a movie about a black man who finds out that his white girlfriend's ancestor once owned his ancestors as slaves. It is a collaboration between the creators of South Park and Kendrick Lamar, and it appears to be a musical. I don't know how many of these details are true, so please take all of that with a grain of salt, but if this movie takes off Book of Mormon style, then look out. Besides, Paramount would be distributing this one, and they are kind of like a sleeping giant of the Oscars world. So if this is a hit, maybe. So, let's fill in the rest of the nominees, but how do we know what to look for? This is when we introduce a good old MapjStudios staple, the 5 Oscars demographics to help us decide. Retirees like the kind of movies your parents like, simple 3-act structure films that make you feel good at the end and don't rock the boat too much. Bonus points if the film appeals to their nostalgia. For example, harkening back to the 60s or 70s and being about real-life figures from their glory days. They continue to be the biggest voting group in the Academy. Cheerleaders are perhaps the stereotypical Oscars voter who tends to like movies about movies, and tend to vote for their friends or otherwise what makes themselves feel good about their profession and life choices. They're not as prominent as they were once, and by default I kinda assume they blend in with the retirees nowadays. Still, I'm keeping them here for now because when a movie gives them proper cause, like The Fabelmans or Mank, they gather hard. Popcorn munchers are more or less casual moviegoers, more in lines with what your friend who has a life likes to watch. They like movies that are entertaining, but also tend to go for hot items that are frequently talked about. Messengers tend to vote for movies for their message or political significance. It's one thing if the movie's good, but what does the movie say about the world as a whole and stuff like that. I notice messengers tend to particularly like social satire films because one, without fail, always gets in. And to specify, I'm talking about social satire as like talking about serious or political topics in a tongue-in-cheek way. think more like The Substance, or maybe even Emilia Perez, than something like Nickel Boys. Art house snobs are the maybe pretentious sort who really dig into the craft of the movie. They tend to prop up smaller movies or auteur movies with a strong artistic vision. They have grown in prominence in recent years due to the recent expansion in the Academy, which brought in a lot of international voters, and they definitely like their art house stuff. To win Best Picture, you need to please most, if not all of these demographics to some extent, although each demographic tends to have at least one rep, so to speak, like I call them spikes. I think Barbie got nominated primarily due to the popcorn muncher demographic, so did Wicked, while Green Book got primarily nominated due to the retiree demographic, and so did A Complete Unknown. We are never going to see all 10 nominees be retiree movies, nor are we going to see 10 tiny indie movies. This approach encourages diversity amongst the films we're predicting here. Now, I think we can already tie in the popcorn munchers with Frankenstein. Sure, they could go with Wicked 2 or Avatar 3, but I think popcorn munchers go with the new hot thing, and that hardly applies to sequels, as I've been finding out lately. I want to give the popcorn munchers a new hit film to follow, and I'm going out on a limb with Frankenstein. Furthermore, and I think we do need to know more about One Battle After Another to find out, but I'm also kind of giving this one to The Messengers. Apparently it's a more political and commercial film than Paul Thomas Anderson's other works, so depending on how much comedy there is, this could apply. I also say this because I don't have an obvious pick other than The Entertainment System is Down. Okay, without further ado, let's consult the other films here. I did add Deliver Me From Nowhere since a Bruce Springsteen biopic starring the Bears' Jeremy Allen White is just too tempting to pass up for the retirees. If you want to swap this with Michael, I couldn't blame you. You can kind of treat them as interchangeable, but I'm only going to predict one of these music biopics, and I think Deliver Me From Nowhere feels like the more stereotypical pick. And number 10 is Sorry Baby. I think it's very easy at this phase to lean towards established names, big budgets, and all that jazz. However, small indie movies, beloved by the film community and art house snobs, do also squeeze in here pretty reliably. So I wanted this 10th slot to go with the passion pick. Again, we likely just haven't heard of this film yet, but Sundance has proven that Sorry Baby is a certified hit, and I think it's a good idea to take a chance on a directorial debut, like Nickel Boys and Past Lives. Okay, so the 10 films I'm predicting for Best Picture are The Life of Chuck, One Battle After Another, Wicked 2, Marty Supreme, Is This Thing On?, After the Hunt, Hamnet, Frankenstein, Deliver Me From Nowhere, and Sorry Baby. Let the record show I also actively considered Bugonia, Michael, and Avatar 3. If you like this video, please give it a little like and a comment and a ring-ding-bing of the little bell icon down at the bottom, please. Thank you very much.